ఆ డోర్ ఓపెన్ పెట్టండి. ఆ డోర్ ఓపెన్ పెట్టండి. స్టూడెంట్స్ ఎవరైనా వస్తే వెనకాల నుండి వస్తారు. సో గుడ్ ఆఫ్టర్నూన్ ఎవ్రీవన్. లంచ్ చేశారా అందరూ? సో డన్. Yeah. So today we have Diya DASGUPTA with us. She's an All Indian rank, secured All India rank 2007 and UPSC CSE 2023. Okay, she's our student. She's our OGP student. Today she is going to interact with you people. As you know, we are starting our OGP program this month. So majority of you sitting here are beginners, and apart from the beginners, we have some veterans too who subscribe to the different test series, and general aspirants too. So most of the students are going to give you a prelims this month, right, on 16th. So we thought of arranging a interaction with our topper Diya DASGUPTA. Hope the inputs that she's going to give you will help you in a maximum extent. Please. How's it? So a warm welcome, Diya DASGUPTA, and thanks for accepting our request to communicate, to interact with the aspirants community here at the Hyderabad. Thank you. So yeah, without wasting a time, I'm straight away leaving a dice to Diya DASGUPTA, and before that, small token of appreciation from Hyderabad branch. So తను సెషన్ స్టార్ట్ చేస్తుంది ఇప్పుడు. ఓకే, in the first few minutes CSE journey gurinchi she will interact with you, and post that few of the students are giving the prelims this year, right? For you people, she will talk about prelims last minute revision tips and paper taking strategies, and post that question and answer session will be there. So if you're having any doubts or questions to us, you can ask Ms. Diya DASGUPTA. She will answer. Okay, don't hesitate. If you have any language issue, you can ask in Telugu. Okay, I will translate it on behalf of you. Okay, thank you.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So I think you have been briefed a little about the structure of today's discussion, right? So at the very onset, just I'll introduce myself in about a couple of minutes, and then we'll go on to the session, right? My name is Diya DASGUPTA. I'm a lawyer by training. I finished my BLLB from National Law University, Odisha. I completed my Masters in Law, LLM, in Dispute Resolution last year. And this year I've secured All India Rank 207. I am expecting the IPS service. Yes, that didn't take a couple of minutes. Short and sweet. Yes. So what we're going to do today is very simple. We'll be first talking about the civil services journey. Then we'll focus a little bit about the need of a foundational course of sorts. Then we'll be moving on to prelims some aspects that I might have a little bit of light to throw on for you guys, and then we'll be concluding with a Q&A session with all of you, right? Um, at the very onset about this UPSC journey, with a show of hands, can we just see how many of us have been in this journey for slightly over a year? Anyone in this room? Okay. So by this time, we all know that this journey requires a little bit of time, right? And perhaps my introspection into my own journey has revealed one very significant thing. Studying is the easiest thing in this exam. The subjects that you have to study primarily, you have been doing bits of it since school, and then you have your graduation, right? So studying history, studying geography, polity, etc. is not the main challenge here. The main challenge A is doing it day and night, over and over again. And the second more difficult challenge is the cutthroat elimination that happens in this exam, right? From 13 lakhs for 15 lakhs, just 1,000 of the 1,000 seats are there, right? This is a crucial, it's very, very, very cutthroat. I don't have any other words to explain it. This is what makes this exam challenging and difficult, right? So, what we need to navigate through this cutthroat elimination is a right approach to proceed. And when I say right approach to proceed, this approach has to be very poignantly and distinctly distinguished from your approach that you had for your graduation exams, right? In graduation, some people did hard work, some people did last minute studies, and somehow you sailed through. And how you did it was, and that flows across through all graduation subjects, maybe barring law a bit, where one has to study maybe for 2 3 weeks before the exam, and medicine, where people have to study a lot. Other than that, all graduation subjects, you study the book first, and then you go on the D-Day and write the exam. So material and then question answer. This is how your approach goes, right? In graduation. And I think that's blanket truth for all graduation subjects in India. What has to be a distinguishing factor in this exam is, along with hard work, you need to put in smart work. And the first tenet of that smart work is reverse engineering. What do I mean by reverse engineering? Instead of first looking at your subject books, like say Lakshmikant, if you're reading polity, you first have to, and that's my takeaway, first look into your PYQs, both for prelims and mains. I consider PYQs to be akin to the Bible with respect to this exam, or the Gita, or whichever holy book you consider. That's how precious I feel previous year's questions are. And if you really understand the importance of PYQs, you will understand by how much your time will get reduced. What does PYQ do for this exam is, it draws a boundary for this seemingly vast syllabus that is there for prelims and also for mains, right? So the first takeaway overall from this exam journey is, don't make the mistake of ignoring PYQs. Even if it's your first attempt or your fourth, doesn't matter. Thematic analysis of PYQs for prelims, thematic analysis of PYQs for mains, and that you will see. I mean, for me, what I used to do is, I used to take a printout of last 10 years of prelims question papers, set A, as you get everywhere, and keep it. And every day for like the last 3 4 months before my prelims, I used to go through the content of the PYQs, right? That used to give me an understanding as to the thematic areas that are important. It gives me an understanding as to an insight of which areas are certain topics from where there are probabilities of question coming in. For instance, we all know national parks are important, right? If you do a little bit of a better thematic analysis, you'll be able to understand there are certain areas in the country from which recurring questions on national parks is asked. Another one small thing that I had realized is, in environment, groundwater is an important thematic. Every year there's some question or the other on groundwater which keeps coming. So what's my job as an aspirant? My job is to understand, okay, groundwater is a theme. Now I need to do, first I need to understand all the questions that have already been asked on groundwater. Based on that question, I need to do a little bit of a further research on groundwater as to what can be prospective question in the future. and then make diligent notes of it, right? This goes for prelims. The same thing you do for mains, right? You understand, for that matter, local self-government is an important thematic in polity, right? And if you do a little bit of in-depth study, you'll be figuring out there are certain important areas in local self-government which have a tendency of coming every year alternatively. Once you've identified that, the game changes in your favor. How? The game changes in your favor because instead of having to study a lot, you do study a lot, but you have special focus on a few thematics. And when that happens, you're able to bring in specificity. You're be able to bring in committee recommendations on, say, urban local government. And you'll be able to bring in data based on urban local government because you've by-hearted those. The thematics have helped you to understand that. And the moment you do that, obviously, if you bring in specifics, your marks in mains will skyrocket. They will have to improve, right? This is my second takeaway. And my third takeaway is right now, a lot of you might not be thinking about the interview stage, but thinking about the interview stage, I have two insights that I have to share with you. Number one, each one of you try to cultivate a hobby from day one. Whatever is your hobby. For instance, I enjoy doing travel, food and lifestyle blogging on microblogging sites, right? I wrote that as a hobby in my DAF. And there were questions which were asked on it. I'm from Bengal, Kolkata. So they asked me questions on how the Kolkata, this was in a mock test, mock personality test. How is the Kolkata biryani different from, say, the Hyderabadi biryani? That was a question that was asked to me. Similarly, in my interview, they asked me a question. I did my graduation in National Law University, Odisha, and I'm from Bengal. So they asked me about the cultural similarities between Bengal and Odisha, where there was a sub question on the kind of food that is there. So it can be as simple a hobby as blogging, and there are some very sophisticated hobbies which people put. You, whatever it is, start cultivating a hobby because it's going to be of use, okay? And be genuinely interested in that. Second question. Despite my mock interviews being really nice, I did not score as high marks as I was expecting in the interview stage, right? So ensure that your mains preparation is so good that the interview marks does not make a difference as to where you end up in the rank list or which service perhaps you want to get IAS. Ensure that your marks is somewhere around 850 or 870, so that slightly lower marks in the interview will not really make you miss your target service, right? These are the two main insights that I want to share with respect to the interview stage. A little bit into the mental aspect I want to delve in, because sooner than later you will all realize that this journey takes a toll on the mind, right? So from day one, this is something that I had planned on sharing if I ever became a topper and I got to have topper talks. Have a very solid game plan with respect to this exam. And by game plan, I mean from day one, understand how many attempts you're going to be writing. Say you decide for yourself that you're going to be writing 3 attempts. Don't be rigid on these 3 attempts. Maybe in the second attempt or the third attempt, hypothetically, you miss the margin by 1 or 2 marks. You know that you have the potential and you ideally should write again, right? But in your mind, please be slightly clear about a game plan with respect to your number of attempts. Second, be a little clear with respect to your exit strategy. If not this, then what? At the end of the day, it is a very prestigious job, but it is a job. It is not your entire life. It's a part of your life. Once you become a civil servant, majority part of your life will go into serving your country. But lot of the aspirants I've seen, they make this exam a bigger than life affair, which leads them into depression. I have seen a few very severe cases of it. So my very sincere suggestion is, the moment you have these 2 questions answered, number 1 is exactly how many attempts you're going to be having. Again, asterisks there. It is subject to modification and evolution according to your preparation and performance at the exam. And second, what's going to be your exit strategy, right? If from today onwards, if you know, for instance, I knew that I should get done with my LLM, So once I'm done with my LLM, I know that in case UPSC doesn't work out, it will be slightly easier for me to come back to the legal field. Similarly, you might have something along those lines in your engineering and medical and so on and so forth, right? So take care of your mental health. About the journey, this is the journey segment. Do take care of your mental health. If you're studying for a rigorous amount of 12 hours every day, 8 to 12 hours every day, ensure that on Sundays perhaps you take half day off. Be sustainable and be kind to yourself, because at times this journey extends a year and you need to be prepared mentally. I think mental preparation is the first and foremost preparation you need to take for this exam. Because when I say mental preparation, I mean you have to train your brain to be emotionless. Do not get emotional about this exam. What do I mean by that? I'll tell you. When you get emotional about this exam, prelims becomes one. For me personally, I believe prelims to be one of the most trickiest stages of the exam for me. Some people are there, they're very confident about prelims. For me particularly, I find prelims to be the most challenging and trickiest stage. The first attempt I failed prelims, second attempt I went to the interview stage, third attempt was after 5 days of my final result, when I knew that I had not made. That was a big strategic mistake, by the way. Do not waste your attempts, right? If you have 5 days and you know that prelims is a challenge for yourself, uh, given the scenario, I was expecting to be in the final list, I could not find my name 5 days after I have prelims. Ideally I should not have taken that attempt, right? In the fourth attempt, I missed. I had cleared the GS part of prelims by like 12 marks or something, like over the cutoff, but I missed out on CSAT by 2 marks, which again brings me to the question: ensure that you do not mess up CSAT. CSAT is now becoming very, very, very tricky. Focus significant number of hours in your day on CSAT. And this is my current attempt. Every time that I have prepared well, other than that one 5 day thing, I've cleared the GS part of it. Despite having done that, I still believe that prelims is one of the trickiest stages. The reason being, some of you who are from the engineering background since your childhood, and when I say childhood, since you were 17, 18, your brain has been trained to solve MCQs. But not a lot of us, me included, we do not perhaps have that MCQ aptitude. One needs to cultivate that MCQ aptitude if you find prelims to be tricky. So a little bit more on that we'll be talking into the third segment when we are delving focusedly on prelims. Just remind me that how to develop MCQ aptitude will be one segment in case I miss it out, right? uh, Overall, this is what I think you should be focusing on. Please take care of your mental health throughout your journey. Make it a sustainable journey. Be very crude about your time. In case you are working, some of you might be working. I was working the entire of my last attempt. This attempt, that is, I was working, I was doing my LLM, and I was writing this exam. So I did not have time at all, which worked to my advantage. How? I'll tell you. When you're very tied up, the most pressing and annoying question which comes to all of our minds is, what if I fail? If your schedule is very tied up that you just get to sleep, like I got to sleep for maybe 4 to 5 hours or less than that for the entire of last year, when that kind of a thing happens, you really don't have time to think about anything. Half my time went at my job, after that I had to study, and then I slept. So I never had time to think about the prospective outcome. In case this question bugs you and you get anxiety as to what if I fail, what will happen, how will I face my parents, how will the society judge me, and all of that, try to involve certain activities like sports. For instance, badminton happens to be one of my favorite games. If you have something like that over here, make a group, indulge yourself in sports, have a schematic structure to the entire day so that you don't have time to think about the outcome. It's very plain and simple. People have asked me, please delve more deeply into how to abide by this rule, that do your duty, don't think about the results. It's easier said than done, but the easiest way to do it is actually fill your day very nicely so that you don't have time to think about all of these things, right? Overall, this is what I have to talk about the journey segment of it. Shall we now move into a little bit of prelims? Yes. Okay. Before I start off with what I have to say about prelims, can I have a few questions that you have in your mind with respect to the upcoming prelims, or prelims in general, so that I can better cater to your doubts? No questions? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So CSAT, what my strategy was during the before I went in for the paper, my strategy was I should minimum attempt 45 to 50 questions. Right? There were about 27 to 28 passages. My strategy was because I had practiced comprehension with a lot of accuracy within time. So as a practice, I used to take 10 PYQ comprehension questions and try to attempt it in 5 to 6 minutes and ensure that not less than two are wrong. So, accuracy was something that I really focused on during my passages preparation. And once I was able to do that, I could complete roughly 26 questions in a comfortable amount of time. However, I'll be very honest, no matter how much I prepared for maths, I could not cross the 40 limit. I had attempted just 40 questions in CSAT and I scored around 80, right? So my accuracy was slightly higher. The strategy that I had told myself was I knew maths would be difficult because that's the general trend that was happening. I told myself I'm not going to get stuck on a question for more than 120 seconds. That is 2 minutes. In case I find that I'm stuck at a question for more than 2 minutes and it's not taking me anywhere, sometimes a division is long, but you're doing the division and you know that you can get to the result, so it's taking maybe a little bit longer, don't skip that kind of a question. But if you're stuck at a question and you really can't you're stuck in a maze maybe in that question, switch. Number 1. Number 2, with respect to maths, try to pick the easy question. Know how to pick the easy questions. You have to literally scan through the paper, turn the pages, and try to identify which questions are slightly easier. One small mistake I did here, I had very thoroughly analyzed the previous year's questions of CSAT. And there are these questions, right? A, B, B, A, C, C, and then there's a gap. These are one of those easy questions. And this easy question was there in 2023 paper also. But because I was a little slow in picking the questions, I missed out that question. Now, that's a very easy question. You should ideally be acquainted as to how to solve those easy questions and do those. Do not miss out on those easy questions. So, not more than 2 minutes on one question. Pick and choose, go through the entire paper. So, my strategy, first I attempted the entire passages section, say in roughly about 45 to 55 minutes. And the remaining 1 hour 50 minutes was for quants. I knew that I wanted to really cross 45, at least 45 to 46, but as luck had it, I could not cross more than 40. But then again, accuracy was my game. I made sure that I did not blindly mark something, because that will backfire and that will ruin your chances. Hmm. Okay. So my revision strategy was this way that um, I had revised. Okay, number 1, I used to maintain something called a mistakes copy in all my mock tests, and this is something for the people who are attempting in the future, you can do it. In all the mock tests that I solved, if I got a question wrong more than twice, the same theme, I got it wrong more than twice, I used to write it down in my mistakes copy. So my mistakes copy was divided into GS1, GS2, I mean, think about the subjects: polity, history, economy, ancient, medieval, art and culture. Every time I got something wrong there, I used to quickly jot it down, and that in my mind was my last minute revision copy also. Alongside that, I also had a last minute revision copy. What was this last minute revision copy? I always figured out that in the fundamental rights chapter, I used to somehow mess up the writs, right? So when I say mess up the writs, no, I everyone knows the names of the writs and what they stand for. But nowadays they are going a layer deeper into asking, for instance, can habeas corpus be enforced against a a private person, or for that matter mandamus can be enforced against a administrative body or not, right? So our job is to understand which writ is just for judicial bodies, which is for judicial and quasi judicial bodies, which is for administrative bodies also, which writ would perhaps be enforced if you are not aggrieved per se. So if your friend is aggrieved, you might be a person of interest, or even if you're not a person of interest, you can approach the court with that writ. So these are those final layers that you're going into, and I always used to forget this. So in my last minute revision copy, I used to write down the name of the writ dash and just write down, okay, enforceable against this, this and this. Similarly, constitutional bodies and non-constitutional bodies, often there's a confusion as to whose retirement age is what, right? Might not have a direct question in CSAT, I mean in the GS part these days, but it could be a statement based question. So I formed a small blanket strategy, not strategy, I mean a mnemonic of sorts, wherein actually not a mnemonic, but then if it helps you, all constitutional posts, at least what I have come across, they at least have either 6 years or 65 years, whichever is less, right? This is the blanket thing for all constitutional posts, right? Other than the Lokayukta, I guess. So try to form these kinds of tricks that will help you to remember a lot of things in 1 or 2 lines, right? Similarly, reports is an important area. We keep getting these things, right? So I think the World Economic Forum has, whenever it publishes reports, like a lot of its reports, at least 50 to 60% of its reports start with the term global. Now I identified that and I wrote it down, and wherever there were exceptions to this rule that I had made for myself, I wrote it down in my last minute revision copies. Self-confession, ancient medieval art and culture is one of my weakest areas. So I ensured that my last round of revision started on Tuesday, when Sunday is the exam. I did a last round of revision which started on Tuesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday till 11 o'clock in the morning was my strategy to study. I ensured in this last round of revision, I did ancient medieval at the end, so that no matter whatever I mug up, at least I can, get 2 to 3 questions right from there. So according to your personal choices, I think that you can figure out how to work, right? Does that satisfy your doubt? Should I delve a little further? Standard books. How to revise the standard books. Okay, so here again I think PYQs plays an important role. If you have the PYQs in front of you, you would definitely know which is one of those chapters which have the maximum number of questions. Say Parliament is such a chapter, but Parliament in the book comes in sometime at chapter 20 or something. You start from chapter 1, by the time you reach chapter 20, your energy is exhausted. So if you know that Parliament has a lot of questions, next time you do revise, start with the Parliament chapter. Don't start with the first chapter on the states and on the preamble or the states and union territories, right? Similarly, after that, fundamental rights is important. So you revise the fundamental rights chapter, keeping in mind that PYQs is my yardstick. Whichever areas PYQs have focused on, revise those more extensively. So in this way, instead of spending say 1 hour on fundamental rights, you will see fundamental rights will get wrapped up in 20 minutes, right? So again, PYQs is one of the saviors that you have out there.
We will be forgetting economy. If you can't revise for 10 days or 1 month, you will be forgetting what is inflation.
Very true. So for instance, again, my last minute revision copy was where I had jotted a lot of these economy terms, especially. For instance, you have different types of inflation. You have stagflation, you have skewflation, and there are chances you might forget which is which. First, try to understand before you mug it up. That will prevent you to forget. Second thing that you do is, even then if you forget, just jot it down so that it's sufficient if you look at it and you understand, right? So again, last minute revision copy is going to help you significantly there. So say you have roughly 15 days to go, right? In these 15 days, if you're starting a fresh round of revision, say from Monday onwards, try to see, keeping PYQs in perspective, which areas have higher chances of thematic recurrence and reappearance, and if you can figure that out, try to see which area you forget most and jot those down to revise on the last round of your strategy. And I cannot stress enough on this fact, confidence is the deal breaker here. There are people who wouldn't have studied for more than 3 weeks for prelims specifically, but just because they bear that supreme level of confidence, करे MCQs है तो मैं कर लूँगा या मैं कर लूँगी, there is nothing that can stop me from clearing prelims. I have seen people talk like that and very miraculously they do clear it. So go into the exam hall with that confidence and do whatever it takes to build up that confidence. The thing that I did to build up that confidence was how to develop this MCQ aptitude. Now you have 2 weeks, try to solve as many MCQs as you possibly can. Say 50 to 100 MCQs. You can take up any mock test from anywhere in the market that is there, right? And I'm not telling you to solve it in a, at a go. Maybe wake up in the morning and solve 10 MCQs, right? After you have your breakfast, solve 10 MCQs. This will get you into that MCQ zone, that MCQ aptitude. There's no two ways, there's no shortcut. I think you have to do your MCQs, you have to do your revisions, right? And whatever mistakes you make, another very important thing, whatever mistakes you make in subjects like polity, you purposely have to train your mind to identify that mistake. Because say you made a mistake, you just checked your answers. I have scored 98, I am very happy, but I did not check what are the mistakes that I made and I did not rectify it. Chances are if that same question comes again, you'll again make that same mistake, right? So the moment you've made a mistake, forget about your marks, doesn't really matter. Make sure you rectify that mistake to the very core, right? Third thing about prelims, often we solve tests and we have those 100-pager MCQ, 100 pages synopsises, right? You can't expect to revise those synopses the day before the exam. Not possible, right? How do you do the revision of your mock test then? My strategy was, whenever I did a mistake in static portions, right? For instance, fundamental rights, there would be a synopsis available there explaining the error in the synopsis area. If I highlight that, means that I am increasing my bulk material that I have to keep revising. Instead of doing that, what I did was I went back to my source book. If I made a mistake in fundamental rights, I will not highlight in my synopsis copy. I will go back to my Lakshmikant chapter. I will circle the area where that mistake is present and I will put asterisks writing, read carefully. It's an indication to my mind that I had made an error here. So it effectively means that you're reducing the quantum of materials you have to go through the last week before the exam, right? And try your best, your level best, to go through everything that you feel is important in those last 4 to 5 days, your last lap of revision, because that will boost your confidence level tremendously, right? Again, same thing applies for mains. You know how the mains papers go, right? Friday you have essay exam, you come back, your exam gets over by 12 o'clock, you are back at home by say 1 o'clock. You have till from 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock, say 8 hours to revise GS1 and GS2. But on Saturday you are writing GS1 and GS2 paper, you are writing for 6 hours. The exam gets over at 5 o'clock. By the time you get home, it's 6 o'clock. From 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock is the time that you can study. And in those 3 hours, you are expected to revise GS3 and GS4. And it's not you are expected to revise, mark my words, if you can revise the entire syllabus the day before the exam, the confidence that you'll bear on the D-Day, even if you've not read anything substantial, okay, anything different, just because you know that I have read and I have done everything that I could possibly do to do my best today, you will see your marks will increase by 5 marks. So confidence is the game here. Do whatever it takes for the next 15 days to build up your confidence. Stay away from negative people, number one. People who don't believe in you don't have a place in your life, right? Shut them out. Be as crude as possible. no mercy. Second, be emotionless. When I say be emotionless towards the questions that you're solving. For instance, we often get frightened when we see that in the set that we have received, A, B, C, D, we see that the first 10 questions I have no clue what to do. Maybe this attempt is gone. 2023 attempt, the first 13 questions I had no clue about what to do about them. I could eliminate one or two, but I could not get to the answer. I still ended up getting 98 or 100, where 75 was the cutoff. Because I just treated every question with the same importance that they deserved. No question will get me 5 marks, right? I will have to get that basic cutoff marks and above, and you just have to pick and choose your questions. So that's an example of being emotionless and not carrying the baggage of previous not being able to solve the question or baggage of my previous attempt's failure when I'm solving this attempt. Be very emotionless, and it's again easier said than done. We are emotional creatures. We tend to get emotional, but you have to train your brain. And again, these are things that I've picked up alongside my journey. Our brain is the most malleable organ in the entire body. What does malleable mean? Malleable means that उसको जैसे पटको वो वैसा बन जाता है. You train your brain to be in a certain way, your brain is bound to be, and it's bound to react in that way. So it's up to you how you train your brain, right? So overall, this is what I had to tell you about the prelims approach, the mains approach. If I've missed out anything, I think one thing is there. Whenever you're making notes from day one, ensure you make them in a way that you can revise that entire paper in a span of 2 to 3 hours. Your notes has to be that crisp. That is why I was telling you about the way in which you'll write your exam. GS1, it's a vast portion, but you have to be able to revise it in 3 hours. So first round of note making might be a little big. The next round of note making will be slightly crisper. But the last round of notes that you make, okay, you're covering ancient, medieval, modern history, you're covering society, you're covering different aspects of geography, and all of it you have to finish your revision within 3 hours, and the best part, it's doable. Same applies for GS2, the same thing applies for GS3. GS3 you can finish it off in 2 hours if you're really effective in your strategizing of note making. Note making again cannot happen at the first go. Never make notes when you're reading it for the first time. My strategy has always been sit with a highlighter. Whatever you feel is important in the first round, highlight it. In the second round, when you're reading it, make your notes then, because then you would exactly know, having read PYQs, what all is actually important. Then the third round of notes, for me, I'll tell you ethics notes, okay. Each bullet point in the syllabus, you know that you have to make notes for each bullet point which is there in every GS1, GS2, GS3 and GS4. At the end, my last round of notes were such that for GS4, for ethics, for that attitude chapter, my entire set of notes was condensed in 2 sides of this A4 sheet. And how much time does that take? That takes roughly 3-4 minutes for me to read, because I had read my notes so many times. Again, a strategy here, if I can finish off GS4 revision in 1 hour, that means after having written GS1 and GS2, when I have just 4 hours to study, I can give 3 hours to GS3 revision, which means I can push up my GS3 marks immensely, right? So the entire thing is a very mathematical kind of a thing. Strategy is very important. Strategize from day one how you are going to be, for instance, how you are going to be dividing your time in the next 15 days. You can at least do 2 rounds of revision very easily. I can say you can do 3 rounds of revision if you divide your time effectively, because if I were in your place, I would do 1 round of revision in perhaps 5 days, another round of revision in 3 days, and another round of revision in the last 3 days. Saturday, ideally, I wouldn't study. I stopped studying on Friday itself, right? Because I want to have very calm and chilled out mind when I am attempting the prelims exam. है ना? So strategy is key. The way you implement is from today onwards, go back and finalize how you're going to spend in the next 16 days.
Mains answer, I couldn't complete about 20 questions in 3 hours.
Okay. Mains answer writing. Every paper has a different strategy for me. Okay. One of the lengthiest papers that you will find is General Studies 4, which is ethics. It's very difficult to. A lot of people still can't complete. So when I was writing, my center was the UPSC Bhavan Center, and I saw that there were people who were scribbling. The person is taking away the paper and that person is still scribbling, right? The exam, that happens. That happened in college, that keeps happening around you also. So how do you do it is, number one, again train your brain, 11 minutes for 15 mark, 6.5 to 7 minutes for 10 marker. First you have to stick to that. Second, what I used to do for say GS4 was, I used to, in the first half an hour I used to do 5 questions. Then I used to do all the case studies in exactly 102 minutes. 51 minutes for 3 case studies, that is 17 minutes for each case study. So I had my time divided to that precision, right? Then I would be left over with roughly 48 minutes to do 8 questions, that's 6 minutes per question, and I could manage to stop writing about 2 to 3 minutes before the bell rang. So like this, the more you write and the more you write in an exam environment. A very important point I want to stress on. What is the meaning of an exam environment? How many of us study in our rooms? Like inside the, not study room, inside your own room with doors closed, right? Okay, it's a very peaceful environment, right? How many of us write our exams sitting in that room? Like prelims, mains. I'll advise you not to do that. The reason is, you again have to train your brain to write exams in an exam environment. This is an exam environment. When there are people around you who are huffing and puffing, you know, there are people who huff and puff while writing mains. There are people, sometimes you have a long bench. 2 people are sitting on the either end. One person is writing so fervorously that the entire bench is shaking. And you have to manage. I mean, there's no 2 ways to it, right? Then exam environment is, you're writing the paper and the examiner, 2 or 3 examiners, someone joins them and they're discussing. You're racking your brain as to how to solve the CSAT question, and they're discussing about what they had for food, right? And again, you have to train your brain to silence those things out. The way I did it was at Insights in Bangalore. There's this one floor where it's the most noisiest floor, right? So purposely I used to take my question paper and I used to go and sit there. People are shouting at the top of their voice sometimes. They are talking about games, sports, politics, fashion, everything. And I used to try to ensure कि ऐसे करके भी, if needed, I am solving my paper. Because the more adverse situations you put yourself into, the seemingly good situations become very easier. I have been to exam centers where the examiners have been excellent, to the extent that, you know, pin drop silence was observed. The desks were excellent. But I have also been in exam centers where the seat that you got is basically a primary school's infrastructure. So you need to prepare yourself to face exam environment, and you should do that couple of times at least. If you're writing prelims on 16th June, try to do that a couple of times here. If you're writing at home, don't write in your room, write in the dining hall where perhaps someone is cooking, some TV is on. Do that. Yeah? Yeah.
Current affairs, which magazines you followed, or any websites you follow?
Okay. So for current affairs, newspaper is key. People say they have read the newspaper for more than 2 hours. I don't subscribe to that particular strategy. For me, newspaper, the sources were newspaper and any standard magazine that you like. It can be anything. I will not take names, right? Whichever suits your style of reading, writing, do that. But newspaper is a must. I used to study newspaper only for 45 minutes. I never studied newspaper the first thing in the morning. What happens when you study the newspaper the first thing in the morning? You waste 2 hours. You waste 2 hours of your most productive time if you are an early riser. If you are a late riser, then maybe the first 40 minutes or 45 minutes is going to be where you are breaking in the limbo. You can strategize reading the newspaper then. For me, morning hours were most productive. I did the toughest subjects then. I did CSAT solving at that point in time. But towards the end of the day, the last thing that I did for the day was newspaper. I used to put a stopwatch for 45 minutes. How I read my newspaper was, I first went through the headlines. If the headline is relevant for UPSC, I'll look into the news inside. Otherwise, just skip and move on. So the headlines part of it, except the editorials, took me about 15 minutes. The remaining half an hour, I went through the editorials, whichever was relevant for the exam. I studied those nicely, underlined it, wrote pointers if I could extract material from those editorials into my mains. And I took screenshots of it. I put them into respective folders in my iPad, which essentially meant that after 6 days, on that Saturday or Sunday, I'll sit down, I'll go through all the screenshots of the week and transfer the material into my notes. So this is how I made sure that newspaper was never more than 45 minutes. You might have your own strategy, mix and match, but don't invest a lot of time in newspaper, especially people do it for 2 to 3 hours, which is a huge chunk of your day. Especially if you're a working professional, it's not that easy to do newspapers for so many hours. Yeah.
Some say PAB website we should follow. Many articles will be there in PAB.
PIB, yes, I did it significantly for my interview preparation though. Try to get hold of those magazines, which most magazines actually look into PIB, look into the Hindu, the Indian Express. So if you've missed out the newspaper one day and you're doing magazines regularly, but you're doing newspapers also regularly, the news gets covered eventually. The same news happens for a long time, right? Yes. Guidance. The role of guidance, that is role of mentors perhaps, yeah. Oh, that is the most important thing that I feel is there, because a mentor can tell you, and that mentor can be anyone, mind you. That mentor can be a sibling who has already cleared this exam or has cleared stages, can be a friend who's willing to help you out honestly, because there's a lot of misguidance there also. Given that we are going through an infodemic kind of a situation, too much information out there, need to know what not to study. There are a lot of people have FOMO. Lakshmikant has a new edition, the green book. I still have the purple book. What if I miss out on something? You have to tell yourself, no, it's fine. Your purple book is enough. If there's something really important in the green book, tell your friend to give it to you for a few days, and then for your own satisfaction, go through it and get done. Go. Right? So guidance is someone telling you that your purple book is enough. PYQs. I did PYQs like, chalo, I can, the way I used to solve college exam, because I started my preparation in 2019. 2019 was my first attempt. Like college mein, some senior of yours will give you that last year's question paper, or you would have gotten from your library, maybe 1 or 2 months before the exam, instead of one night before the exam, as everyone does in college days. I went through the PYQs and it's like I solved it, done. But PYQ analysis has so many depths to it, you will realize when you speak to your mentor.
How much time did you spend on your PYQs?
A lot. If I have to tell you the quantum number, I will say perhaps spend half an hour every day on your PYQs. Because PYQs is not just solving the questions that have come in the past. PYQs is, it's like an onion, literally. There are layers to it that you'll get to understand, right? Won't be telling a lot about PYQ analysis online, but PYQs, if you speak to the people who have cleared it, again, role of a mentor here, they'll be able to tell you how PYQ, number 1, draws that boundary. Number 2, tells you the thematic areas. Number 3, it at times helps you to make your intelligent guesswork much more accurate, right? Which also brings me to this particular part. When you are about 5-7 days before the exam, try to avoid mock tests of institutes. Try to stick to UPSC style of PYQ solving, because if you are relying heavily on intelligent guesswork, mock tests are not designed always along those lines. UPSC, if you've solved it a couple of times, UPSC PYQs, you'll be able to figure out there are certain traps in certain statements, how to identify those traps, how to increase the efficiency of your intelligent guesswork. Also, please figure out and be honest to yourself as to which are your weak areas. My weakest of the weak areas is ancient, medieval and art and culture. So I knew that I will not do intelligent guesswork in these areas because I get those wrong majority of the times. But my accuracy of intelligent guesswork in economy, in environment is slightly higher. So I'll take the risk there. So identify those fortes, identify your strengths and weakness. Yeah.
What about those tricks we have? Suppose we have ministry that goes wrong, data is wrong.
That's not a blanket rule though, right? I do not really want to talk about tricks out here because there is no 100% certainty about any of it, right? And I might be very blatantly misquoted. So that is not something that I'll be talking about. It's
What
for
you had done regarding this?
that's I'll reserve that conversation that you can have with someone who's guiding you or who knows how to analyze the papers well, because really there's no certainty, there's no 100% certainty about certain tricks. But I mean, I don't think tricks really is the word to be used also, but you develop an aptitude when you go through PYQs very rigorously.
Ma'am, can you please brief on interlinkage of subjects?
Very good question. Interlinkage of subjects. Before interlinkage of subjects, I want you to understand that there are certain subjects which have to be answered in a certain way. For instance, you would see a lot of similarity in GS1 questions in disaster with respect to say a volcanic eruption, and the same thing being treated as a disaster management question in GS3. But you can't write the same introduction in both these papers. The paper that you're writing, when you're writing a GS1 paper, before coming to interlinkage, I have to first tell you how to distinguish. So when you're writing a geography answer, ensure your introduction and content is geography oriented. When you and the map that you're drawing of a volcanic eruption should ideally be the diagram of the volcano. Whereas when you're treating it as a disaster management question in GS3, you could ideally give a map of the world and show where volcanic eruptions have occurred most frequently. This is the difference in approach that you should have. That's how you distinguish the content that you have to write. Now coming to interlinkage. Interlinkage is something like my optional was PSIR. Now I had to study a lot of these theorists, and roles on justice is like a specific theme for those who have taken PSIR, or you even have sociology as your optional. Now justice is an important component of GS4. You can draw your knowledge from there and write not very specific PSIR type question, but a generalist answer with a bit of more specific knowledge. Second, I think you can interlink a lot of content that you study for essay and ethics. In your optional paper, generally in optionals like PSIR, sociology, etc., I've seen paper A is basically more static in nature. Actually, in both paper 1 and paper 2, section B is more dynamic and it has more to do with current affairs, and section A is more static in nature. So there should be, when I say static, theoretical in nature, there should be a lot of interlinkage between the two sections in a single paper, and there should also be interlinkage between paper 1 and paper 2 of the optional that you are doing, right? For instance, in IR, if I am writing an answer on say the Indo-US current situation relationships, what I'll have to do is I'll have to quote a lot of examples from the current affairs, but I'll also have to give theory which is perhaps present, a little bit of it is present in paper 1, a little bit of it is present in paper 2 also. So interlinkage is something that you have to do if you want to score high marks, and second, that comes very naturally if you've revised the content maybe 5 to 6 times. I subscribe by this philosophy that read one source 100 times instead of reading 100 sources one time each. I think that's one of the good things with which you can move ahead, because if you read 1000 things, you will not, and one time each, you won't be able to retain it. Revision is key. Yeah.
How did you manage law and UPSC at the same time? It must have been a burden.
Law as in my job?
As in your job or your
My LLM.
When did you start your preparation?
I started my preparation in 2019. 2019 was my first
after
attempt.
graduation?
Yes, after my graduation. And then after my first failure, so my first year of preparation was the only time that I studied full time. After that, it was not like I had a lot of pressure from my family, but there's this one value that I have been brought up with. I knew that I had to be financially independent, because that kind of instills, I don't know, some innate sense of confidence in you. So I started working after my first attempt. I was doing a consultancy job. How did I manage time? If I have to talk about that one last year, it was a little bit more hectic. I think that was not sustainable for a huge long period of say 3 years, because it was 1 year I could manage. So I knew that say I had a 9 to 5 job. So before going to office, I used to wake up at 4:35, you know, finish off like 4 hours of study before I went. Then I used to take easy subjects to office. Say some essay was easy for me, ethics was easy for me, sometimes newspaper reading, I used to take it to office. And during lunchtime, when everyone went to the cafeteria, I used to sit at my desk. Whenever there was time in between assignments, I used to study there. Come back from office, sleep for half an hour, 45 minutes, so that by 6:30 I am again fresh. 6:30 to 10:30, 11 used to be one more slot for me. Saturday, Sunday was off, so Saturday, Sunday was like I used to stretch as much as possible.
Mostly on prelims day, mostly 30 to 35 questions everybody can know from basics. And at that time, after getting prepper, 5 minutes after getting 5 minutes, what's your mindset at that time? How to deal with that prepper?
Yeah.
You have to come to a conclusion.
So firstly, I had perfected my prelim strategy thoda sa extreme way mein, because as I told you, I am not that strong at prelims, but I had to over prepare in order to make myself feel more confident. So first I'll talk about those little bit of pre-preparation that, yeah, exactly. For instance, I knew that my paper has to be completed in 3 rounds. No matter what paper you give in front of me, if it's a static based paper, if it's an analytical paper, no matter what, 3 rounds is my approach. How did I do my 3 rounds? For every 10 questions, I allotted 5 minutes, which basically means that my first round would get over by 50 minutes. So every time I used this watch itself. So every time my watch went in 5 minutes, I used to check whether I am done with 10 questions or not, right? So this is the first thing. First round in 50 to 55 minutes, and in that also there were what I used to do was, say I could solve it then and there. That means this question is closed. I will mark in the OMR sheet. For example, question number 13, option is A. In the OMR sheet, I'll put 13 ke against me A mean a dot. I didn't circle it then and there, but okay, be very careful about marking your OMR. Do not keep it for the end. The best way is, you know, okay, 13A, ek dot to laga do, so that you can come back after 20 questions and you can circle all those doubts, right? So after 55 minutes, now I have to move on to the second round of questions. In my first round itself, I used to eliminate statements and go ahead. Now imagine there were questions I could arrive at 50-50. I know these are my second round questions. So against the question, I would write 2. Okay. The moment I write 2, I mean that next round when I'll come, I'll only read those questions which have 2 written against them. So that will cut down so much of my time. And even to cut down time more, what I also used to do is, if I have a 50-50 doubt, I will circle the question. If you look at my prelims question paper, you will laugh. It is very filled. It had a lot of, it's very badly marked. And why? It's very simple. There's no board. Okay. So for instance, there are 3 statements, right? Statement number 1, I know I have eliminated it. I am confused between statement number 2 and statement number 3. Okay, I know what is the crux of the question. Wherever is the crux, I'll put a circle there. And question number, statement 2 and statement 3, I'll circle those. So in my second round, when I come back, I will just read the circled parts. I will not read one extra word also. Because of this, my second round took only 25 minutes, right? Then I used to come to third round. Again, while solving my first round when there were questions where I could only eliminate one option, which means that 75% of the question is still unsolved. I will write 3 against it. Those are my third round questions. I will not read third round questions during my second round. So I used to give some good 30 minutes to 40 minutes for my third round questions. Now I'll now be remaining with hardly 10-15 questions which are like ऊपर से जाने वाला questions. Now I'll try to use my brain very nicely. I'll have some good 15 minutes for that. I'll use my brain very nicely and calmly, use all the derivative knowledge. Okay, I have told this on previous interviews. I have used knowledge that I've seen in Big Bang Theory, whatever Buck Sheldon does. I have used knowledge from there to get my prelims questions right. I have used quotes which I have seen in Friends in my essay and ethics. So it works in a way which works out well for you. From today onwards, just have a perception change. Whatever you see around you, just try to think कि इसको मैं exam में कैसे use कर लूँ. That helps a lot. Yeah.
After paper 1, were you confident that paper 1 going to be
After 2023 attempt you're talking about?
was it impacted on afternoon?
No. So after paper 1, I was happy actually. I'll tell you why. Because as I told you, I had done 3 rounds. I had done a lot of mock tests. So 3 rounds, matlab I have to do it in 3 rounds. I could finish those 3 rounds. You have a checklist what all you want to see yourself perform in the exam, actual exam, okay. So I did my 3 rounds, number 1. Number 2, you have to sit there and analyze what is the kind of paper that you've gotten. For instance, that paper was factual. I knew that if this paper is factual, there are chances that I will get wrongs also. In order to offset the wrongs, because as you said 30-35 is the basic level, everyone can do it. But then remaining 65 questions, what do you do about it, right? In order to increase my score to cut the, cross the Rubicon of the cutoff, I knew then and there I have to attempt more number of questions. I attempted 95. I have never attempted 95 questions in my life. But sitting then and there, I had to take the judgment call that okay, this is a factual paper. That means I will do negatives definitely. So I have to push up my attempts so that my positives can balance the negatives. So judgment call you have to take. So this is the kind of analysis or mindset preparation you do before. So because I had done all of it, I knew that chalo, from my side whatever I could do, I have done. Now remaining whatever happens is up to God. Then 2 hours you revise your maths. I mean formula basics again, and then you get another shock. I mean so what happens, you have to prepare your mind for that shock also. Don't go in expecting an easy paper. I think that's the best thing that you can do. If you are prepared with this mindset that it's going to be a difficult paper, the advantages of paper 2 being difficult is you saw cutoff was 75 for GM, right?
In essay paper, they are quoting the questions and just asking for 1000 to 1200 words answer. How did you manage that?
I love essays. I think that is one thing that works to my advantage a lot.
It should be full of content. But
Yeah.
how can you create the answer of 1000 to 1200 words answer?
Okay. So again you have to
And the
pre-prepare.
code will be only 5 to 10 words.
Yeah. So you have to pre-prepare. Number 1, yeah.
I have a sub question regarding
Yeah.
this. Do you read any non-fiction books or other books by civil servants to help with your essays?
Yeah. Books, we will answer that. So essay, you have to link it with books.
Same thing. How I want you to give with the example overline essay
Okay.
on the topic if you
Okay, done. Nothing? Okay. Yeah. So essay, right? As I told you, I always had this mindset ki whatever I am doing, whatever I am watching, whatever I am doing, how can I use it in my exam? This was always underlying, but I was chilling also. Like I did not ensure that I am always obsessed with the exam. So for instance, let's say I have written an essay on a quote which has been picked up directly from the Harry Potter series. Okay? What happens is, if there is a very sophisticated yet an enigmatic idea in a fiction book also, and it's an established best-selling fiction book, I feel I can quote it in my essay. I will not overdo it, but I will do it perhaps. There's this movie, one of my favorite movies, Catch Me If You Can. It's there on one of the OTTs, right? It starts off with this man talking about this example. 2 mice or rat fell into a realm of, I think, milk or something. One of them gave up and drowned, one of the mice, and the other mice churned its legs so hard that it transformed that milk or curd into butter and made its way out, right? So I remember, I saw that and I felt it was very impactful. So I immediately made a note of it. Said whenever there's a leadership based question in essay, I can start my essay with quoting this, because it's based on a true story. This man who used to be in the US, he used to forge checks, and then later on he used to help FBI to identify forgery of checks, right? So so books is an important part of your essay preparation. If you are a person who reads books a lot, if you are not a person who reads book a lot, I would suggest that build that habit. Maybe 2 to 3 pages every day of any book that you pick up. Today it might seem 2 to 3, but after 10 days it will be 20 pages, and within a month you will have read maybe the entire book. It's fine, slow and steady is good. Also, how you can make some notes is, make notes on perhaps the 10 best classic novels in the entirety of history of mankind, and try to read the summary of it. Then read the themes of PYQs. For instance, love is a theme, right? You can definitely quote Pride and Prejudice, provided you can contextualize the Pride and Prejudice context and content to whatever theme or the quote that you have in the essay. Second, how you work around with philosophical essays is identify the keywords. In an essay, for instance, let's say, give me a quote, any random quote.
All addictions are just there to fill voids.
Beauty
Oh.
lies in the eyes of the beholder.
Okay, we can take both. All addictions are those which just fill up voids. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So in his quote, beauty lies in the beauty, eyes and beholder. For me, these are the 3 important keywords, right? In the quote that he gave me, distractions. Distractions are those which fill the void. All is a keyword, distractions is a keyword, void is a keyword. The way I proceed with is, number 1, once I understand the theme of the topic, I try to find a very interesting start. Maybe it can be from my movies that I have watched. I told you, right, half day Sunday would be break for me. I used to watch movies. So maybe it can be from there, it can be from a book, maybe from sitcoms that I watch, anything. I also collected interesting starts for all the thematics which were there in PYQs. For instance, people start writing about common examples of Mahatma Gandhi. Don't repeat the same common examples that you're reading for GS, right? My Experiments with Truth is the book that he's written. He refuses to call his autobiography though, because he had said in the book that someone had asked me, when you're writing this book, you're still young, what if these ideologies change in the future? So that is why he said, hence I'm not calling it my autobiography, I'm calling it my Experiments with Truth. Now I knew this would be a unique way to start an essay rather than just harping about Mahatma Gandhi's leadership. So common themes of examples, try to find out unique ways to start it. And again, PYQ analysis, identify themes, prepare these in advance so that it becomes easier for you. After you've identified your keywords, what, why, how. Around each keyword, ask what is beauty? Why is beauty different from different people? How is beauty different for different people? The answers that you get become arguments for your essay, and then it becomes very easy to fill those 12 pages, 1200 words.
Which books you have read for PSI option?
Books. So standard notes which are available in the market, along with some topper notes which I found online, and then political, OP Goba was a constant companion. Along with that, for IR I did you know, those Can the Elephant Dance by David Malone. These are books, these are not standard textbooks, but they help you to develop a perspective. Bharat, and then The India Way, Choices, these are certain books that I read.
How to maintain GS and optional or like a separate type for both optional GS?
So you can, assuming that all of you are preparing full time, you can divide the time in the entire day, keep 4 hours for your optional, the most productive hours of your day, and then the remaining time you can divide between GS prelims and GS mains.
Or we have to take in certain months to complete optional or GS for prelims second time period.
Yeah, so try to finish off. The importance of a guidance or this foundation course comes in here. I think tomorrow is some entrance test, I was told that you guys have scholarship test, right? So if you have one good guidance like this, what do you call it, foundation course kind of a thing, where you can wrap up the entire syllabus, be it your optional or be it your GS, by say 6-7 months. Say by Jan you're done with your syllabus hypothetically, then and it is doable, I really believe it's doable. So once you're done with your syllabus say in Jan, then your repeated rounds of revision will start, and even when you're doing your syllabus you will figure out that you have revision tests. Perhaps in some test series, whatever test series you pick up, you would have revision tests. So revision tests will also beckon you to revise whatever you've already read. But then once your syllabus is done, you can very strategically figure out, okay, now I have to attempt a GS2 paper. So I'll give 7 days to that GS2 paper, and entire revision of that should be done. Once if you do it in 7 days, especially after mains, if you can revise once in 6-7 days, the next round of revision will take 5 days. After that you revise GS2, it will take you 3 days, and ultimately the day before the exam will take you 2 hours. How to maintain consistency? How do you maintain consistency? I mean, it's a very tricky question. I really don't have an answer to that. I think the fuel comes from within. ठीक है? I mean, you treat it. One thing which helped me, yeah.
I'm struggling with I'm facing once they start with one subject, I'm game completely lost with one subject. I'm unable to talk to other subject.
No, so you have to, now this is why I say, no, I don't say this, basically I've heard toppers say this, people who are already in the services say this, that your training for this exam does not, your training of the civil services, I am expecting IPS, I will be training at NPA. My training does not start when I set foot at NPA. My training started when I decided that I wanted to do this exam. As I told you initially, I was very attached to the outcome of the exam. But होता है ना, repeated धक्का खा के you are trained to be emotionless. That's a training. Second training is switch on, switch off. You have a personal life, you have a professional. Now your professional life is studies, right? So even in that professional life and personal life, you have to do switch on, switch off. In your professional life also, you have to do switch on, switch off between subjects. So you can't get lost, because an ideal civil servant can't get lost in one case. There'll be 500 cases coming to him. He has to balance and juggle it, and that's how you have to train yourself to do it from now on only, right? So consistency, I think that's something which comes in from within. Why you started this entire purpose, that is going to help you. And then there's this Josh also, and there's with every passing day there's something, it's very enigmatic, something crazy happens within you, and you know that you have to do it, period, no questions asked.
Usually, I belong to Andhra Pradesh. In our district university will be there. In that BA course will be there. BA general, history, economics and political science. And in that one semester will be environmental science. And one semester will be having this aptitude reasoning. Can you follow those graduation books for this instead of standard books?
I have not done it. It's not a tried and tested thing to do.
It's also for graduation.
I mean, I would, No, that's what I'm telling you. If that's not your optional, it's only in your optional, I would say that do whatever you've been taught. Mechanical engineering was your graduation subject, and so you use your reference books, right? Law is your graduation subject, use whatever you've studied. But you know, don't try to bring in innovation other than in your answer writing. The approach, this is again where your mentor helps you. Whenever have a mentor you feel you can trust, and then follow what that mentor tells you. Don't try to do anything out of the blue, because ultimately in order to get into that top 80 ranks, no, you just have to perhaps keep doing things in a just above average position, right? For that, out of the world innovation in approach is not required. I used to tell this to myself to keep my essays simple. Initially my writing used to be very complicated in the sense, I'm a lawyer by training, as I told you. I've been trained for 5 years to write, and legal writing is slightly, you know, all over the place. So not everyone could understand my writing. The way I told myself was, if again, it's again my personal thing, if a very established person like Rabindranath Tagore, who has layers and layers of meaning in his writing, were to write an essay, I don't know if he would get very high marks, right? But if you write plain, simple, direct English, which makes sense, but English which is presenting sophisticated ideas also, English which has a lot of examples but a lot of analysis also, something which a 10th standard kid will also very nicely understand, chances of getting high marks are more. So whatever is the set path with respect to basic materials and all, stick to that. Bring innovation in your writing style.
And do we need to by heart those thinker statements?
I did, not all thinker statements, but if you're talking about quotes, I did learn up a lot of quotes for essay specifically and for ethics, and I used to revise it once every 3 to 4 days, to the extent that I knew them at the back of my hand. Okay, for instance, one of my favorite quotes is by Nietzsche, who says that if you have a why to live, you will figure out anyhow, right? So because it was such a favorite quote of mine, I have not only used it in essay and ethics, but I made a huge poster out of it and I stuck it in my room.
I'm talking about this in option.
PSIR.
Paper one, everyone has.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there also, because for instance, there would be a quote by Machiavelli on the prince, right? So ensure that those 3-4 quotes which are there for every topic, write it down on a separate paper, keep revising that over and over again. I think you'll be able to remember it.
How to choose option?
I-
How you have
And
chosen?
also, what is the reason
How to
you
decide?
to change the option not to PSL?
So first of all, addressing your question, it's been a question that I've been asked in so many interview questions. I mean, my personality test in mock interview, everyone asked me that. A very true answer to it is 5 years of law I had done. I knew that I would be working in law also. My course was BA LLB. I had completed political science I had done 3 semesters of political science. And since my school days, I used to do a lot of MUN, Model United Nations competition. So I was very interested in IR also. So put those two together, I knew that I wanted to explore something new, finite time, finite syllabus, doable.
How to choose option?
Okay. Have you seen that aspirant series? Yes?
Changes from social to
वो तो change is different, but then the answer which the tall guy gives, how do you choose an optional, right? It's absolutely correct. If you've not, you can just yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you've not watched it, watch a YouTube reel on TVF aspirant series, how to choose optional, okay? Because I felt it was quite relevant. The ways you do it is, just a second, giving you a perspective or my take on it. Number 1, you should be genuinely interested in that optional subject, number 1. Number 2, the optional subject must be something which you feel is finite and you can complete it within a span of 6 to 7 months. Number 3, if possible, you might be able to get a peer group of that optional so that you guys can sit together in groups, brainstorm questions so as to have a good structure, and brainstorming of questions is very relevant. And number 4, if you have some kind of a test series support for it, so that there is a competitive comparison between what you are writing and what someone else is writing in some other part of the country. So you know where you stand in the competition. Overall, this is my analysis of how to choose an optional.
Does planning introduction and conclusion based on
Absolutely.
will help in the exam?
Absolutely. Intro and conclusions will help you in every paper of mains.
Like I planned here for the important topics.
Yeah.
Help in the exam.
Absolutely, it did. It helped to boost up my PSIR marks by how much? By some 24 marks this time. 272 I scored in PSIR, which is one of the good scores this time, right? And I could do it because for every thematic, I sat down, identified themes, and for every thematic, I tried to prepare an introduction and conclusion. I did that for GS4 also, where I got decent enough marks. I tried to do that for GS2, GS1, GS3, wherever possible. So when you're making your notes, the best bet forward is don't make notes like you make college notes. Your notes for GS 1, 2, 3, 4 and your optional ideal, you can't do it for your optional, I agree, but at least GS 1, 2, 3, 4, try to have your notes in the format of a question. So if your notes is on attitude, introduction may, there can be 3 variants that you can have. Write it down there. Whatever is the body part of it, write it down there. Conclusion should have value addition, write it down there and there. Introduction, conclusion, preparation helps a lot. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Hmm.
In your all your mains,
Mhm.
so what different of the important things you will tell you to add on to increase your marks?
Yeah.
This is one of my question. And the second question is, please little emphasize on the case studies in the paper GS2.
Okay. So I wrote two mains, and both were my interview calls, right? My first main, second attempt was in 2020. This was my second mains. So this time I had a jump of 70 marks. My main score was 810, and I think that could be possible because a very thorough analysis of PYQs. I used to take PYQs and I used to draw, because I had paucity of time. I was working. I did not have a lot of time to write full answers. You have time to write full answers, so be disciplined and write full answers, okay? But what I used to do was take up the question wherever I am. Roughly in 30 seconds, I used to make a structure for the question. Introduction should have this value addition. There are two subparts to the question. Each subpart should ideally have these points and the examples of each points. So this used to be an exercise of ranging between 30 seconds to 2 minutes. I used to do it for all the PYQs that are there. So PYQs helps you a lot in doing this, and brainstorming of the PYQs also. Now coming to your GS4 case studies. Again, I mean, I must have said PYQs by this time maybe 100 times. So PYQ, if you take up last 10 to 13 years of, 13 to hua nahi hoga, I think 10 years of ethics, after ethics was introduced, take up every case study and beside that write the theme of that case study and do it for all the years. So maybe if it's 10 years or 11 years, you have 66 case studies. After going through every case study and identifying the theme, you'll see there's a recurring pattern. For each theme, prepare an introduction. For example, if the theme was on exploitation of labor, I had an introduction ready in my mind that I'll be talking about categorical imperative or deontological approach in the introduction, and I'll talk about the end should not determine the means, right? That kind of introduction would be ready for me. Based on a case study of exploitation of labor, I'll write down keywords. Maybe I'll talk about justice, I'll talk about categorical imperative and deontological approach, I'll be talking about equality. These are those ethical terms. Made a list of that, and in conclusion, what could be a conclusion? Maybe 4 noble truths, 8-fold path, something like that, 10 commandments. I had a list of things like this that will add value to my conclusion. For every case study, I had prepared notes like that, and I had also made a list of reports. So we have a mistake in our case study approach because we think it's a problem solving activity. It is not. Case study also is looking into how critically you can think about the problem, also how much substance you can bring. And when I say substance, I used to heavily quote from my GS 123 papers in my case study. I have written about corruption perception index and India's rank. I have talked about global hunger index perhaps wherever required and India's status. I have quoted data from National Family Health Survey 5. So borrow heavily from your GS 123 in your case studies. Borrow heavily from section A of ethics where you study about theories into your case studies. So this interlinkage is very important, I feel.
How to make a skeleton of basic skeleton notes? Suppose any question came in mains that you don't know. Definitely 20 one or two questions.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how to manage with those basic skeleton notes and how to make those notes?
So, see, this is slightly of a oxymoron question that you don't know, you realize you don't know in the exam hall.
Any labor related question.
Yeah. So how?
Have the skeleton notes in our back of our mind.
So what you could do is ideally the questions will not be that of a deviation from whatever you've studied. Like monsoons is something that you have studied. They will have a just a different twist, like this time they asked, right? So different twist of a monsoon question. So in your mind you know that if you have a question on monsoon, you will show the direction of the winds, how they get deflected in India. The question is on Indian monsoons. So you have that thing in your mind. You know that what is going to be your, you know that just related to that specific demand you'll have to tweak it a little bit. So sitting on the spot you have to try to make sense of what is the exact demand and then you include it. So you'll see that even the offbeat questions are still based on the recurring themes that are there.
And have you made any
Skeletal notes?
entry notes?
Yes, for instance, some topic on society, I saw that there were some questions asked on something related to technology and its impact on the human society. So for that you can sit and think of one skeletal framework. Okay, its impact on family, its impact on you know, perhaps friendships, its impact on intragenerational equity, intergenerational equity. Like these, for like extreme cases you can have these notes, but you don't have to perform excellently well in every of the 20 questions, right? So 12 to 15 questions if you write really well, you're in. Ensure you finish the paper nicely.
Ma'am, it is out of consequence. Like you are joining the services. Will you be sincere in your duty? Like there will be external forces. Just what? How did you plan for it?
I think they'll train me to navigate those sources,
Like,
right?
What will yes, you will face a severe corruption in the future. Like you are choosing IPS. Like a MLA will call you. Just what will be your
My context.
yeah.
My
I have
context
seen
is
an
going
IPS
to.
officer who was just because he is being sincere, he is being killed for his duty.
See, that is what.
Like how will you manage this?
Now, I think the way you're asking me these questions as to how do you divide time between optional and, you know, your GS part, maybe during training I'll ask someone else that how to save myself from being killed.
And most
But then to be very frank, no, to be very frank, I really believe that the services gives you an opportunity to do a lot of good, and what is a testament to your character is how you navigate the pressures, how you switch on and switch off. If mentally here, again, brain is the most malleable organ. I taught it to myself a couple of years back. I'm going to take it ahead with me. So I know I have to, within myself, I have to be an extremely cutthroat and strong person, that no matter whatever pressure is being put on me, I should not crumble. After that, I think as and when the situation comes, like your case studies, sitting in the exam hall, you'll be able to figure it out. And there'll always be seniors, there'll always be batchmates, everyone is going to be there. So let's not assume the worst of everything, right? If you're really assuming the worst of everything, then why are you even here? I mean, I'm just putting that idea out. There is bad in everything in the world, but still we all in this room are hopeful that we can do something for the country in the positive way, right? So let's carry that hope. I think when a person, I got to know yesterday, a person cleared IAS in his 13th attempt. 12th attempt he cleared the civils, got maybe IRS or something, and then in his 13th attempt he cleared the IAS. He is now an IAS officer. He definitely had some josh, some hope in him that he wants to act in a way and make a difference, right? Let's aspire and let's carry that beacon of hope ahead.
Would you have been giving the 6th attempt if you have failed in the 5th one?
Would I have given? Very good question. I am not very sure about it, because I did there were certain discussions that I had with my family, and together I had made up my mind that maybe if I don't find myself in the list, it becomes slightly challenging. I knew I had to switch back to law, but maybe if I saw that I missed out by 1 mark, again I told you, that's again a very tempting kind of a thing. You know you have the potential, you just need to work a little harder. So, yeah.
I have one more question. This is me asking as a public person. If tomorrow I come to you regarding a problem as a student or will I be directly connecting to you, or will I be loaded off to some other person to take on?
No, I didn't understand. If you have a problem and you are coming, say I am sitting in a police station and you have a problem and you come to me, it's my duty to listen to your problem.
Or in case you are busy, you will give my responsibility off to lower officers.
I mean, these are questions which are very situational based. I mean, no, not ethics. These are, you can't even.
Myself put myself in these situations where I have connected with various IPS officers and gone directly towards them and asked them a few questions. Would you be doing the same for me?
Why not? If I really see, everything is priorities, right? For instance, if I have to immediately attend and investigate a very gruesome case, and at that point in time, if you have come to me with respect to an optional related doubt, I'll have to prioritize my time accordingly. So, but if I am available and you are there or anyone is there for some help, if the time and resources are there, I mean, it's all about priority. And these questions, you know how it works, right? Everyone is there to help each other out.
It depends on the situation.
Yeah, it depends upon the situation, it depends upon the character of the person.
You have been preparing for UPSC from 2019, nearly hardly 4 years. 4 years you are preparing. How you got motivated by through books, or which books
Yeah,
you have?
that's a good question. And let's stick to preparation related questions and not abstract questions, because, well, I'll be honest, I'm not prepared to answer these questions because I'm not yet in those shoes. I will very openly accept my limitations. People will train us subsequently to cater to challenging situations.
Hyderabad only, Sardar Vallabhbhai.
Yeah, exactly. 12 kilometers from here, I was told. Yeah. Your question, how I kept myself motivated, I'll be very honest, there were days which were very dark. There were days that I have cried. I think everyone cries. Crying is a very healthy way of expressing whatever you're going through. There were days that I had to prioritize putting myself first, and that meant pulling the plug off from unhealthy bonds, from unhealthy communications, unhealthy relationships, and that is just not romantic relationships, mind you. Unhealthy relationships mean people, friendships. Don't ever narrow yourself when I talk about relationships in those respects. So overall, what I really found a lot of solace in every day, day in, day out, was I had a very core support system. Some of very good friends, some of my good friends were preparing with me. So we used to pull each other up. If you have a good relationship with your parents, talk to them. They might be able to encourage you a lot. There was one time when I was going through a lot of struggle, and at that time my father had told me that he respects me, and that one line, it was some 2.5 years back, and that line is so precious, I think, for every middle class Indian child getting that one line that, okay, my father, my mother respect me. They every time they say that we are proud of you. But when someone says something like that, that kind of gives you a push. Ki nahi, I can do better. Then that movie Lakshya. Whenever I used to be down, I used to watch that movie. Every time before I went in for my mains exam, I used to play the theme title track in my head. Literally, people used to do last minute revisions. I used to listen to that music because that music used to fire me up in a way that I know कुछ भी हो जाए मर के आऊँगी but 20 questions तो ख़त्म करके आऊँगी. There's nothing that can stop me from finishing those 20 questions. I will not leave a single question blank like that. कुछ भी हो जाए prelims में 3 rounds करना है तो 3 rounds करना ही है. No matter what is the paper, I will be an ace performer, the best of my performance that I can do in the exam hall. Lakshya, I mean, thanks to Hrithik Roshan's acting and who's the director? A.R. Rahman, is it? Whoever is the music director of those 2 tracks, excellent. Yeah.
How is mock interview different from real interview? Like we can see mock interviews, no one explains about the real interview.
They are quite a lot on the similar lines, but then there are a lot of deviations. In my first interview, 70% of it was on my DAF. In this interview, there were no questions on my DAF. They just asked me majorly on my questions were based on my law graduation. My LLM was in dispute resolution and arbitration, so there was a lot of questions on arbitration, and then there were GS kind of questions, hypothetical questions like that. So similar, you do mock interviews to gain confidence so that you're not nervous on the day.
Like it will be the same.
I can't guarantee it will be the same because as I told you, my
Like
2
when
interviews.
We don't know the question in the mock interview. We'll just explain that we don't know.
Yeah, I did that, and people do that. If you don't know, no one expects you to create an answer out of thin air and try to bluff. That gets you negative marks if you try to bluff and forge the data. That shows that you might not have a upright character.
And they shows that they ask some tricky questions in the.
Yeah, they do. For instance, one of the trickiest question they asked me was, one of the panelists was a ambassador, retired ambassador, foreign services, and he must have been at a very high post in Iraq during the Iraq war. So he talked about something for about 3-4 minutes, and at the end of it, the question was, the legality of the war is immoral, the morality of the war is illegal. This was a quote which became famous during the Iraq war. Given whatever is happening around the world today, what's your opinion on it? So these are questions you are not really prepared for. On the spot you have to think. This is where quotes helped me actually. So I had quotes ready on war, and I could answer that question summarizing it with a quote and then explaining it further.
Ma'am, you need to know about your birth state or where you study.
Yes.
Yeah, they will ask about.
Absolutely. The lane I live in is called Rishi Aurobindo Shoroni. Shoroni, Sarani, whatever you call it. Shoroni is a Bengali word. So I was asked, not in the actual actual interview though, but there were a lot of questions on Aurobindo, his thinking, his philosophy in the mock tests.
History also, like about your state.
Yes, a lot. You have to be very well versed. For instance, a very hot topic favorite question for every interviewer is, you're from Bengal. Okay, what happened to Bengal? There was a time when people thought to use this quote about Bengal, that what Bengal thinks today, the world thinks after 100 years. But now it seems to be the reverse. What is your opinion on it? So it's a very tricky question because it tests your temperament, whether you're a negative person or not. You can't go ahead and criticize everything. The truth is, not everything is bad. A lot of positive things are happening. As a civil servant, as an administrator, you have to harbinge and focus on the positive and propel the positive forward so that the best of the best can happen for the country. So no negative thinking. Whoever was asking a lot of negative questions, negatives are there, it's a part and parcel of life. Not every day is the same, but still focus on the positive and propel yourself forward. Shall we wrap it, or you have any more questions? Okay, last question. Anyone else other than that? We'll wrap it after this then. Yes.
Was there a point that in the mock interview you have been asked about your LLM and the next steps you are taking after getting into schools?
After the attempt, no,
No, not the attempt.
okay.
Your journey with your law
Huh?
and after getting the cadre, what are your things you're going to do? Was there a clash point question on this?
I'm not getting.
Based on your studies, is there any question in the interview?
Mane-
Like you have done the LLM?
as in, how will you use your legal knowledge in administration, something like that?
Yeah.
Huh, that's a very common question. How will you use your medical knowledge prowess in your administration, electrical engineering? It's a very common question, and I think one and all can prepare very well for it. That's it, right?
Ma'am, your optional is CSA. You can be a better IFS officer in the service. Like your subject is still you are choosing IFS.
My training for last 10 years and my job X is in law. So should I just leave all of this and
No, ma'am.
pursue
You
a career?
choose for optional as the PSA.
That always does not, then I would have kept IFS as my first preference. I mean, what you choose as a subject does not always have to have a direct bearing on your service preference. It depends upon corely what you are interested in.
It is based on personal.
Absolutely, based on personality. So, simple as that.
Time management is
To answer your question, just a second, to answer your question a little bit more, there are people who are CAs who write this exam, but their first preference is still IAS. It's not IRS or it's not ICAS or IDAS, right? So, what you want matters the most. Yes,
Are you okay with this or you are going to work?
that the future beholds. Right now, I really want to take a break and relax.
time management in exam prelims.
As I told you, my approach was 3 rounds, 50 minutes, every 5 minutes 10 questions, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. Try to finish, okay, if you're practicing mocks, try to finish your mocks in 1 hour 50 minutes. If you practice in pressure right now, you will be left over with at least 2-3 minutes in the actual exam, because you're taking 10 minutes off in your practice exams.
Actually, last year question of prelims was very difficult. They are saying they are topper. But any scoring topics for 2024 prelims?
Are you asking me to predict?
Just
I am not a soothsayer. All that I can tell you is analyze your PYQs, analyze the weightage. Scoring topics are always polity, which have been the trend. Polity, a lot of questions are asked, you can answer well. Economy, environment, I was good at these, I revised these more. Whichever you think is the bulk of the questions are being asked from there, revise those more.
Ma'am, based on the last year prelims paper, like it changed the pattern. Like we should be more aware of the knowledge about the topics, and they will give the 3 points, and we should only 1 is correct, only 2 is correct, only 3 is correct. We will mark out the main points in the and just leave out the small points, and they are asking that one. And is it the priority that we should learn more deep in the knowledge? We should read more.
Try to
knowledge.
refine and deepen your knowledge to the extent possible. Yes, I think that applies for
Last year it
everything
was-
about the exam.
It was a big shock to many of the
Yeah,
aspirants.
absolutely. So you have to try to refine it to the best of your ability. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here. I think it was. Shall we call it the last question officially? Yes.
For CSAT, which books you have read?
CSAT, it was not just books. Okay, I tried to do a lot of I used YouTube extensively for CSAT. I did specific lectures on topics like number system, probability, permutation, combination, and then YouTube has playlists from SSC and bank PO level, questions prepared on these topics. So I used to, I can't recall the exact names of the channel, but you just use your research skills there. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was thank you, and it was great talking to you all. I really hope that something that I said might have been of help to you. I'd be really grateful if that really helps you. Okay. Oh no, please. This is just one step. The entire journey is ahead. I really do not believe in. I'm genuinely saying I really do not believe that I have done something that great that I have potential to do an autograph right now. No. there's the entire lifetime of serving the country, let that happen, then it will make sense. Just an example. I mean, I'm humbled to know that I am an inspiration. Be inspired, work very hard, and be positive in your approach. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
So, okay, I hope Ms. DASGUPTA has answered all your questions, right? So post the session, please don't leave. We have a refreshment for you. Please have it. And apart from that, I have one more announcement for you. This month 28, we are starting our first batch of the OGP. That is a full-fledged course, a classroom course for Civil Services Examination 2025. For that, we are conducting a scholarship examination, scholarship test tomorrow. Offline and online, the timings are same, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Hope majority of you know have knew about the benefits of the scholarship test, right? Okay, please participate in the test. Those who are already enrolled for the course, even okay, I request you to take the test. Okay, if any of your friends or maybe your relatives or students from a from a backward status, okay, or looking for the foundational course, just pass this information to them. Okay, they can make best use of this test actually, right? So thank you, students. Thank you very much.
There's one message that I want to tell you guys: be patient. Okay, if you're determined enough, if you're perseverant enough, PDP, patience, determination, perseverance, it will happen. Just be patient and keep working hard.